For most of us, vacations usually mean relaxing beaches, elegant dinners, and exotic hotels. But what if you were looking for something a little bit different? A vacation where fun in the sun was traded for an itinerary of strange phenomena, unexplainable events, and mysterious murders. In this next intriguing hour, we're examining the world's most puzzling places. Does the Bermuda Triangle really exist? Were Peru's Nazca lines actually drawn by aliens? Will we ever know the true identity of Boston's most notorious killer? Stick around as we try to uncover the truth behind the world's top 10 places of mystery. We begin our countdown with a legend that takes us to the ancient Mayan ruins in southern Mexico. A legend that has baffled researchers and scientists for decades, yet claims to be the very answer to all our questions. Prepare to be enlightened. Number 10 on our list of mysteries is the legend of the Crystal Skulls.
I believe the discovery of the crystal skulls presents mankind with one of its greatest mysteries. The discovery of the crystal skulls, in so many ways, challenges all our beliefs about ourselves.
Chris Morton and Carrie Louise Thomas, authors of The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls, first heard of the legend while vacationing in Guatemala.
When I first heard the legend, I thought it was very interesting, but nothing more than a colourful piece of mythology.
Their local guide told them a fascinating story about 13 lifelike crystal skulls that had been left behind thousands of years ago by ancient Mayan elders, to be discovered by future generations. And the more Chris and Carrie learned about these elusive crystal skulls and their purpose, the more intrigued they became.
The legend says that these skulls were left behind by the earliest ancestors from way back in the mist of time. These skulls are containers of great knowledge and wisdom. They contain information about the past history of the planet, the evolution of mankind, and above all, vital information about our purpose on this earth and our future destiny.
It is widely believed that the undiscovered skulls could be located throughout Central and South America, or maybe even the Southwest United States. But even though vital information is theoretically inside the skulls, according to the legend, humankind is not yet evolved enough to understand it.
The legend prophesies that one day, at a time of great crisis for humanity, that all of these 13 crystal skulls would be rediscovered and that they would be brought together again. And when that time arrived, they would divulge the information which the native people believe is vital to the very survival of the human race.
Chris and Carrie began to actively research the story when they discovered that 5 of the 13 skulls had already been found throughout Latin America. One of the skulls now resides in the British Museum, as well as the Smithsonian. There's also one owned by a man in San Francisco, one in Texas, and one in Canada that's owned by a woman named Anna Mitchell Hedges, who found her skull in 1924 while on an archaeological dig with her father in the lost city of Labutan, located in the jungles of Belize. At the young age of 19, Anna had discovered the first of the 13 crystal skulls, and now, 78 years later, Anna keeps her skull on display in her home in Canada. Chris and Carrie were fortunate enough to visit Anna and see the skull for themselves.
When I first saw the image of the skull, I found it had a very, very powerful hypnotic quality. It held my attention in a way that few other images ever have. I believe that the skull can speak to us at a level beyond words.
Some skeptics of the legend have suggested that the Mitchell Hedges skull is not an ancient artifact after all, that it's a fake. To refute these claims, Anna had the skull tested by experts in the field of crystal quartz.
The Mitchell Hedges skull was loaned to the computer company Hewlett-Packard in order for them to carry out some scientific tests to try and see how old it was. And they were left almost speechless, because There was no sign of any tool marks on the crystal skull.
Without tool marks, the experts assume that the skull was made by hand, which is even more amazing.
They tried to calculate how long that would take. And because this type of crystal is only slightly softer than diamond, the team at Hewlett-Packard estimated that in order to create the Mitchell-Hedges crystal skull, it would have taken several generations of human effort.
Their startling revelations didn't stop there.
There was no evidence of any hand-carving markings either, which led one member of the team at Hewlett-Packard to say that this skull shouldn't even exist.
Not only does the skull exist, but according to the experts, it might actually be able to store vast amounts of information.
The tiny little silicon crystal chip inside a computer is made from the same raw material as the crystal skull. And if you think how much information we now store in this tiny little silicon crystal chip, then just think how much information might be stored inside a crystal skull.
If these skulls are actually giant silicon crystal computer chips, then much of what we've thought about our own technological advancement could be entirely wrong.
We believe we are the most advanced, most developed, most sophisticated civilization that has ever existed on this planet. But the crystal skulls completely challenge that assumption by presenting us with the possibility that there have in the past been civilizations far more advanced, far more evolved and sophisticated than ourselves.
Although dating tests done on all 5 skulls are inconclusive, they have been verified to come from Latin America and appear to be of ancient origin.
I believe that the skulls work on many different levels, that they are communicating a profound message to us about our connection with all things.
According to legend, we have 8 more skulls to locate before their knowledge and insight can be revealed. And no one is expecting these heads to show up soon.
I believe the native elders are right when they say that humanity still has a long way to go in its evolution. We still see wars on this planet. We still see what the native elders call violence against men and violence against nature. But the native Mayan elders believe that the crystal skulls are now here to help us to further evolve so that we can live more in harmony with this planet.
While we wait for the crystal skulls to provide us with the answers to all our questions, we must continue to ponder the purpose for these perplexing lines found in the southern desert of Peru. Number 9, the Nazca lines. The lines can be found on the southern coast of Peru, covering a 200-mile area, and consist of a varied group of enormous figures, including a dog, a spider, a whale, a flower, a monkey, a duck, a hummingbird, and the largest image, a bird that stretches an amazing 900 feet. The mysteries behind these geoglyphs are both their significance and their creation. Although they are believed to have been created by the Nazca Indians some 2,000 years ago, no one is certain why they would have been created, but perhaps more importantly, how. Because of their massive size, the images can only be viewed from the sky, but without the benefit of flight, how would an ancient civilization manage to produce such intricate and complex forms? Well, one theory is simply out of this world, literally. Some have even suggested that aliens created them as landing strips for their spacecraft. Then there are some scientists who recently have stated that if you know where to look, the lines can be seen by simply climbing to the top of a hill. That flight may not have been necessary after all. But the question still remains, what did they use these lines for? Was it just a form of entertainment, or did it serve a larger purpose? German mathematician Maria Reich has studied the Nazca lines for most of her career and believed that they were part of an intricate astronomical calendar. But a more recent theory is that the lines were used as a guide to water resources. This research suggests that under each geoglyph, there is an underground water flow. Perhaps the different images were used to distinguish one tribe's water source from another's. Explanations for the Nazca lines continue to proliferate. Take a good look. Maybe you have a theory of your own that can turn this unsolved mystery into one that is solved. When we come back, we'll navigate our way through the tricky Bermuda Triangle to see for ourselves what this mystery is all about. And is the divine Ark of the Covenant being kept hidden inside this church? It's named for its three apexes: Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. Join us now for a daring excursion into the Bermuda Triangle. But beware, this is one trip where more than just luggage gets lost. This area of the Atlantic Ocean has become a location with a deadly reputation. And with every unexplained disappearance, its reputation just gets worse.
The Bermuda Triangle is a tangible mystery. Out of all the mysteries in the world, the planes and ships were real and they did disappear.
Gian Quasar runs one of the largest internet sites dedicated to the Bermuda Triangle and has been researching this eerie topic for decades.
Since about 1975, I would say 80 aircraft have disappeared of American registry, and 60 boats per month disappear, according to Coast Guard statistics, from cause unknown.
But is the Bermuda Triangle fact or fiction? Have planes and boats really vanished without a trace over these waters? One thing's for certain, it's hard to ignore the numbers. Most of the disappearances, oddly enough, have certain factors in common. Good weather conditions, no mechanical problems, routine radio reports, and sudden silence.
The compass started spinning, and the directional gyro was not accurate. It was indicating that I was making a turn, but I was not making a turn.
Pilot Bruce Gernon was fortunate enough to find his way out of the Bermuda Triangle, but according to him, it wasn't easy. It was almost 30 years ago, but remains the strangest and most terrifying flight of his life.
I started climbing up, and while we were climbing, we noticed this lenticular cloud. It was a cigar-shaped cloud with smooth edges. And it was directly in my flight path, and so it looked harmless, so I climbed right up and over it.
However, what seemed harmless quickly turned into a nightmare for Bruce.
When I penetrated into it, there was some kind of intense electricity going on, like lightning, except it was not lightning bolts, it was lightning flashes. And so I had to turn off to the south.
But just when he thought he might find a way out of the strange cloud, he says that right before his eyes, two clouds came together and formed an ominous tunnel.
But I just continued to fly visually through the other side of the tunnel. When I reached that end, the wingtips scraped the edges of the tunnel.
With his instruments spinning out of control, Bruce was forced to guess where he was going. But when he finally did make it out of the bizarre cloud tunnel, he was almost 100 miles off course. To this day, he has no idea what happened. There are many theories about what might cause the bizarre disappearances. Alien involvement, strange vapors, 100-foot waves, and rapidly changing weather have all been offered as explanations.
You can't really tell necessarily which direction the weather is going to come from. In this particular area, the weather actually converges from different directions. So it provides an enormous opportunity for different kinds of weather to occur at rather quick, very spontaneous and without relatively much warning either.
Meteorologist Jim Lushine attributes the number of mysterious reports to the atypical atmospheric conditions of this area.
It's a very warm area of water which is moving at a fairly high speed, and the energy released from the Gulf Stream gets in the atmosphere and creates a lot of turbulence, a lot of thunderstorms that occur only right there in the narrow area of the Gulf Stream.
But while Jim and other experts believe that intense storms could explain crashes and accidents, you simply cannot explain vanishing. So for now, the endless number of mystifying events that occur in this doomed area will keep the Bermuda Triangle on our list. If found, our next mystery would perhaps be the greatest religious discovery of all time. When Moses was entrusted by God with the 10 Commandments, the children of Israel were instructed to build a container that was suitable to house the holy tablets. Constructed out of wood, overlaid with gold, and adorned with cherubs, this container came to be known as the Ark of the Covenant, and is said to have been a divine presence that guided the Hebrews through the desert and into the Promised Land. Biblical accounts of the Ark suggest that it possessed mighty powers and in fact provided a direct connection to God Himself. The search for the Ark of the Covenant dates back to 586 BC when it vanished from King Solomon's temple. Some scholars have speculated that the Ark was brought by Solomon's wife, the Queen of Sheba, to Ethiopia, and is now being kept inside this church, high in the Ethiopian mountains, safely guarded by a man named Tesfa Mariam. But if it is in fact behind this red curtain, why is it being kept a mystery? For that reason, many speculate the Ark isn't there at all. Others believe that the Ark is located in the Judean desert, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. But until it is found, or until it is revealed, the search for the Ark of the Covenant will remain to be one of the greatest religious quests of our time. When we return, we travel to Oregon and a location where nothing is quite as it appears. And an infamous murder mystery was once considered a closed case, but new evidence is suggesting otherwise. Unlike the Ark of the Covenant, there's no secret about where our next mystery is located. It can be found just off Interstate 5 in southern Oregon. Exit here for the Oregon Vortex.
The feeling you get when you step into the vortex is almost like when you go on a merry-go-round, you spin around really, really fast, and then you step off. And you're just like trying to hold your balance and trying to not fall over and hit yourself. It's amazing. Right out this way, please.
The Oregon Vortex is said to have been discovered by Native Americans when their horses refused to enter the area. They referred to the vortex as the Forbidden Ground. More was learned about the area in the early 1900s, when after hearing about some rather bizarre occurrences here, a miner and scientist by the name of John Lister began to experiment with the land. After many years of studying the vortex, he eventually stated his conclusions in his book. Lister speculated that the land contained crossed magnetic lines beneath the Earth, which produced a strange force field.
He believed that as the vortex here acts as a huge lens or prism, and as light enters the area, it tends to bend, refract, or distort, causing light to travel in a circular or vertical motion rather than a straight line. It's like a spoon in a glass of water. Okay, folks, I'm just going to give you a little bit of the history before we...
Maria Cooper currently owns the land and demonstrates the strange phenomenon of the vortex to tourists. Using copper rods, she illustrates just how the magnetic lines intersect.
Now, the round slab there is where two magnetic lines cross, creating a circular motion. You just walk across where two lines, where the magnetic lines cross, and you can feel the pressure, and it'll either go to your right. This one just keeps spinning and spinning, and then you walk off. Hers crossed, yeah. Yeah.
But spinning copper rods are only the beginning. Visitors can also witness the strange effect the magnetic fields have on humans.
The platform that I am standing on is about 1/4 of an inch lower. Therefore, if we were to trade places, it seems like he should be just a little bit shorter and I should be just a little bit taller.
Some areas of the vortex create the illusion of a dramatic change in height.
Knocked me down to size, didn't you? Do you all see that? Yet I went uphill and I got shorter, he went downhill and he got taller. Okay, bubble in the center.
Maria uses a level to prove the accuracy of the demonstrations.
Bubble still in the center. Straight across whereabouts? Right in here on her, somewhere in here?
Chin.
Chin, okay. And you're over her head?
Yep.
Okay, now I'm going to have them just slowly walk towards each other and then pass each other and watch what happens. It's like the shrinking man. You don't lose mass. It's a mass increase and decrease is what occurs here. Do you see that difference there?
Also on the property is the House of Mystery that is said to have slid off its foundation around 1918. According to Maria, the house now sits in the middle of the vortex. But because of its slanted frame, much of what occurs in here are optical illusions, like golf balls rolling uphill.
The house really was tilted and the ball would always come back to you when you thought it was downhill.
However, there is one phenomenon that is not an optical illusion.
According to John Lister, anywhere in this affected area, you are leaning 7 1/2 degrees. Now just slowly look down till you see your feet. There they are. Put your head back
This
up.
gentleman is standing on a level platform that's built on a slanted floor. He's trying as hard as he can to stand up straight, but is still leaning 7 1/2 degrees.
Now look down. You see that difference? Now
One of
stay
the
right
many
there for a second.
unexplainable
Now, folks,
phenomena
I
that take place in the House of Mystery is the fact that people have a hard time standing. However, inexplicably, brooms don't seem to have any problems at all.
This is an ordinary broom. Now, without any movement, wind, or vibrations, we can get this broom to stand. We have been able to stand it as long as 36 hours. However, when the Alaskan earthquake occurred or any earthquake occurs, we cannot get this broom to stand for any length of time. And then when we have a hard time standing
But if you're still not convinced of the mystery of the vortex, according to most of the tourists here, you have to see it and feel it for yourself.
It felt maybe like a magnetic field or like some sort of energy that would go through your body, and you would feel like you were on a boat. You kind of shift a little bit, move a little bit, actually feel like you're tipping over at times.
And if you're a skeptic, Maria extends to you a personal invitation.
People would probably think that, oh, hey, you don't want a skeptic on your tour, but we're not here to prove. We're here to present what occurs here. If you have your ideas, we're open to listen to them, and we can learn from that because there is so much that we don't know about. People can come and experience what happens here, but if we'll ever know what really happens here, I don't know.
The New England city of Boston is known for many historic events. But its most famous murder mystery is the reason it's number 5 on our list of top 10 places of mystery. It's a mystery that was, for many years, considered solved. But now, almost 40 years later, it's a case that's being re-examined. Between 1962 and 1964, an evil and sadistic killer terrified the Back Bay area of Boston. During this time, 11 women were found strangled to death in their homes. The killer's weapon was always an article found in the home of the victim, usually a nylon stocking, and most victims had also been sexually assaulted. All clues led police to dead ends until a man named Albert DeSalvo confessed to the killings. DeSalvo was already serving time for a string of sexual assaults, and much to the relief of investigators, announced that he was also the infamous Boston Strangler. DeSalvo never stood trial for the crimes. He was stabbed to death in prison before he got the chance, but not before recanting his confession. For decades, it has been accepted that DeSalvo was indeed the Boston Strangler. But recently, DeSalvo's family and the family of the Strangler's final victim, Mary Sullivan, have joined forces, questioning whether DeSalvo's confession was the truth.
There can be no margin of error in Albert DeSalvo's confession. What this major mistake proves is that it wasn't a confession at all. It was just a great lie.
I just never believed that Albert DeSalvo did it.
According to Sullivan's family, there are major discrepancies in his account of the murder and the police reports. DeSalvo stated that he strangled Sullivan with his own hands. But in reality, she was strangled with her own clothing. He also claimed to have inflicted a blow to her head, something forensic specialists were unable to confirm. But why would DeSalvo admit to committing a horrific series of murders if he did not in fact commit them? Many of DeSalvo's relatives believe he was convinced that confessing to the murders would allow him to serve the rest of his time in a mental hospital instead of prison. And that by admitting he was the Boston Strangler, book and movie deals could be arranged to give his family financial security. Here in Boston, authorities have recently responded to public outcry and reopened the case. The bodies of DeSalvo and Mary Sullivan were exhumed for DNA testing, something that was not available in the 1960s. Tests showed that 2 DNA types were found on Mary's body, but neither belonged to DeSalvo.
People won't forget. They won't forget who you are because we still bear the name DeSalvo. Hopefully this will bring this to an end.
But investigators claim that this does not conclusively clear DeSalvo of guilt. In their minds, they got their killer.
Unfortunately, many of the people who worked on this case do not care about the truth. They do not care about justice. What they do care about is how they'll be remembered after they're gone. They all want to be known for catching the infamous Boston Strangler.
Was Albert DeSalvo the Boston Strangler, or did one of the most terrifying killers in history get away? As of now, it remains a mystery. Does the Loch Ness Monster really exist? Is this newly shot footage the definitive proof of Nessie? They're big and they're beautiful, but how did they get there? We take you to the crop circle capital of the world. We cross the Atlantic for our 4th place of mystery, where a creature has been rearing her head for quite some time. If you haven't met her before, allow us to introduce you to Scotland's Loch Ness Monster. Probably the most mysterious aquatic animal on Earth, the Loch Ness Monster remains one of Scotland's most fascinating tales. Over the years, there have been thousands of reported Nessie sightings, describing a creature anywhere from 15 to 40 feet long, with one or several humps. And there have also been a great number of attempts to either prove or disprove her existence. In 1960, a team of students from Oxford and Cambridge decided to cover every square inch of the loch, hoping to end the mystery once and for all. Using echo-sounding equipment and cameras attached to their boats, the students are said to have seen something now and then, but the results were inconclusive. But it is the most recent sighting that is causing many experts to wonder if there really might be a monster in the loch. This 3-minute video, shot by a local tourist, shows some sort of animate object moving around in the famous loch. Experts who have examined the footage aren't quite sure what sort of creature it is they're seeing. And although there are many Nessie skeptics, the existence of such a sea creature might not be all that unusual. Take, for example, the giant squid. Until recently, this was a mythical creature only found in literature. And as recently as October of 1997, a 25-foot giant squid was discovered off the coast of Tasmania. And then there's the coelacanth, a giant fish-like animal that was believed to be extinct for almost 70 million years. However, in 1938, one was discovered in South Africa, and as recently as last year, a Kenyan fisherman hauled in this immense catch. In the past, scientists have speculated that the Loch Ness Monster could be a plesiosaur, which is a term for prehistoric marine reptiles with long necks and flippers. Others believe it may be part of the eel family. One thing is for certain. It is possible for the 22-mile loch to hold an animal of this magnitude. Its abundance of fish and plankton could certainly offer Nessie a steady diet. But whether or not we'll ever know for sure is probably up to Nessie herself. While our next mystery has occurred all over the world, for some strange reason, it occurs most often in the small English town of Avebury. Our choice for number 3, crop circles.
The first time I became aware of a crop circle was when we actually had one on the farm. It was a whole series of shapes. Why it came on my farm, I don't know, but it did. My initial reaction was one of shock and sort of, what the hell has happened in my wheat field?
The farmers in Avebury are all too familiar with the bizarre proliferation of circles. In fact, the frequency of crop circle formations here in Avebury is so great that some of the local establishments choose to make them part of the decor.
No one knows exactly why they occur in this area. Is it because there's a lot of other ancient mystery things? Is it because it's an area that's mostly chalk soil? Some think it's because of all the water under there. No one really knows why they occur here, but they're predominantly in this area.
Sheri Nakken, Director of Earth Mysteries and Sacred Sites Tours, has been studying crop circles for more than a decade.
I was exploring a little on my own and started to find out about crop circles. So I went to as many as I could that year and then the next year, and then I started to bring my groups.
While investigating the circles, she discovered that other people were also curious about Avebury's infamous formations. That led her to create her popular tour.
I really love this area, and I'm passionate about sharing about mysterious kinds of things. Crop circles are just part of that. So we usually see as many as we can within a couple of days' time, going from field to field, farm to farm.
And although tourists and local spectators enjoy the experience of crop circles, the gigantic formations can mean significant financial problems for the owners of the crops.
It was large. It was over 200 meters long and 40 meters wide in places. So in terms of loss, you're talking about sort of maybe 3 or 4 tons of wheat.
The frequent formations started to appear in large numbers in the late 1980s. And in the last 12 years, Tim has had almost 80 crop circles in his fields and has now learned to just accept his fate.
You don't have much choice about it. It's not as though someone comes along and asks, you know, is it all right if we have crop circle on your farm?
What he would like are some explanations for their existence.
We know that some crop circles are hoaxed. There are known hoaxers around who claim to have done some circles, which, you know, I'm sure they have, but physically, I don't think it's possible that every single crop circle that we have has been made by hoaxers.
So who, or maybe we should say what, is creating these modern-day mysteries?
After all of these years, I still really don't know. There's so many theories out there. Some originally were just that it was caused by wind. Some even think the military does them, lasers do them. Is it extraterrestrial? Is it under the earth? Is it a message from someone?
If crop circles are extraterrestrial messages, one has to wonder what they might possibly mean. What could be their purpose?
We could be a sort of a medium between 2 planets communicating with each other. That's something I've heard before. Writing messages in fields.
If I had to speculate on the purpose, change our consciousness on some level, maybe. Is it a message? Is it a language? Is it just some cosmic artwork? I just don't know. Part of me wishes I did, and part of me doesn't want to know the answer either and have the mystery be solved.
We may never know how or why crop circles exist, But for now, the small town of Avebury has stopped asking questions. Coming up, we take you to one of the most remote spots on Earth, where we tackle a mystery of gigantic proportions. And the greatest murder mystery of all time is still being debated. We'll take a walk along the very streets where Jack the Ripper's victims took their last walk. Now that we've reaped new knowledge about the crop circles of Avebury, we continue our journey that now takes us all the way to the middle of nowhere. Number 2, the Easter Island Giants. Easter Island has the distinction of being the most remote location on Earth and can be found 2,300 miles west of Chile and 2,500 miles southeast of Tahiti. Its isolation makes what was found here even more remarkable. In 1722, a Dutch explorer discovered the island on Easter Sunday. Imagine his surprise to find the 15-mile island completely uninhabited, except for the more than 800 enormous statues that lined the shore and littered the land. Many of the statues stand more than 30 feet tall, and some weigh as much as 75 tons. The mystery was, and still is, where did the statues come from? How and why were they created? Their colossal size and weight would make it almost impossible to transport them by boat. So it is assumed that they were constructed out of the volcanic rock found on the island. But even then, how would they have been moved? By today's standards, an 18-wheeler truck wouldn't even do the job. It would take the towing capacity of 2 trucks to transport just one of the larger statues. Since their discovery, archaeologists have used cranes to raise some of the statues that had once fallen over. But many have been left as they were found. Experts from all over the world have attempted to explain the existence of the giants. Archaeological findings indicate that the island was first settled by Polynesians in 400 AD. But what happened to the Polynesians that built the statues is almost as great a mystery as the statues themselves. It's believed that the population of Easter Island was once as great as 10,000. But this number would far exceed the capabilities of the small island's ecosystem. And there is evidence to suggest that these early inhabitants eventually resorted to cannibalism. The lack of trees on the island might be a clue as to how the statues were moved into place. A great deal of timber would have been needed to construct a system of pulleys, platforms, or rollers used to transport something that weighed several tons. Today, besides the giants, the population of Easter Island is about 3,000. You won't find any highways, fast food restaurants, or even a traffic light. And if you go for a visit hoping to find answers to the mysteries of the Easter Island giants, it seems only the statues know for sure, and they're not talking. Our final mystery has been discussed and dissected by crime experts the world over. While history is full of killers that have eluded police, none of them have cut it quite like Jack the Ripper. For almost 115 years, the identity of Jack the Ripper has been a mystery. Donald Rumbelow, a retired London police officer, has been investigating the case of Jack the Ripper for almost 30 years and is considered to be one of the world's leading experts on the crimes.
There were great difficulties in solving the Jack the Ripper crimes. Unlike today, the number of forensic aids was very short. It's going to be another 17 years before you get the first fingerprint conviction.
Not only was there no such thing as DNA testing, the ability to determine a victim's blood type had not yet been perfected.
The difference couldn't be told between animal and human blood, so you could have a murderer covered with his victim's blood who left fingerprints all over the scene. None of this could actually be linked to the killer. The killer has almost certainly got to be caught actually in the act of murder.
At least 5 prostitutes were brutally murdered by the Ripper in 1888. and each murder took place within a 15-minute walk from one another.
Murder was not a commonplace incident in the East End of London at this time. In fact, the number of murders in the East End at this time, in the years before and after 1888, was 1 a year. In fact, 1 year there are no murders at all. So 1888 goes completely off the scale.
Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to London Walk, Jack the Ripper Walk.
Donald takes visitors on a guided tour to witness the scenes of these historic crimes for themselves.
The fascination was already there within 3 months of the last murder, because there is no other murder case like it, where you have such a range of suspects, going from a future King of England to a backstreet abortionist, taking in a police commissioner, a royal surgeon, and umpteen other professions on the way. It is unsolved. It's also got the glamour that has been thrown onto it by the period.
They rebuilt the church and some of these streets. And if you follow them round, you'll see that many of the houses still have their original features.
Well-known crime writer Patricia Cornwell has recently stated that she believes there is strong evidence to suggest artist Walter Sickert was in fact Jack the Ripper. She claims that Sickert chose prostitutes as his models, wandered the streets late at night, suspiciously showed up at crime scenes, and was a master of disguise. Donald does not share her belief.
Sickert's name has been kicked around as part of conspiracy theories for the best part of 30 years to my knowledge. In fact, a book was actually published 12 years ago called Sickert and the Ripper Crimes, naming him as Jack the Ripper. So unless Patricia Cornwell has suddenly got access to new material or new information, which I find extremely doubtful, quite where she's going on this, I'll be really interested to see.
The Ripper, lying on the bed beside Mary Kelly, threw the sheet over her head and made his first thrust through the sheet with his knife. He had several hours to work over her. The face has been skinned down to the skull. She can only be identified by her hair and ears.
It's clear that more than a century later, there is still a remarkable interest in the story of this serial killer.
The other breast and her liver were found under one of her feet. Her heart was missing.
Perhaps it's because of the gory details attached to the murders. Or perhaps it's because this is one story that has no ending.
I suspect the crimes will remain unsolved for the time being, but I sort of hesitate to say that they won't be solved, simply because in the last 15 years, more evidence has come out in the way of photographs, documents, memoranda, than I would have ever dreamed would have come out when I first started my researches.
And at this point in the evening, ladies and gentlemen, as far as identity is concerned, all I can do at this point is leave you with a rhyme.
So there still may be hope yet. But for now, we'll just have to keep Jack the Ripper at the top of our list.
I'm not a butcher, I'm not a yid, nor yet a foreign skipper. I'm just your own light-hearted friend. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper.
The next time you're planning your dream vacation, remember there's often more to see than what you find in your travel guide. You never know if you'll be the one to find the next crystal skull, or come across the desired Ark of the Covenant, or maybe even spot an alien creating a crop circle. Just remember to always keep an open mind